welcome or welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Mary, and today's video is going to be my wrap up for the month of March.
I should have told you that I loved you one more time.
So in March, I was able to read 13 books. I read books from authors from 5 different countries. I read one book from the 1970s, one book from 2010, one book from 2012, one book from 2013, one book from 2017, one book from 2018, 2 books from 2019, and 4 books from 2020. I read 2 books from the same author, so I will only be doing her stats once in my author stats, but I did read from 11 female authors and 1 male author, which I didn't do on purpose, but I think it's interesting that it worked out that way. I also read from 2 Black authors, 2 Latinx authors, and 8 white authors, so not my best month diversity-wise. I also read 1 middle grade, 4 young adults, and 8 adult books. I read 2 books off of my own TBR, which is more than my 1 per month goal, so I'm pretty happy about that. I read 8 books physically, I listened to 3 books via audiobook, and I read 2 books via ebook. It's usually a more even split between actually reading books and listening to them as audiobooks, but I have 1 book in particular that I'm not going to talk about in this wrap up, but that I have been listening to as an audiobook. And it's extremely long, so that's part of the reason I'm still listening to it. It'll be in next month's wrap up, but that's part of the reason that I don't think I got to as many audiobooks this month. I read 1 classic, 1 nonfiction, 5 fantasy, 1 mystery thriller, 2 horror, and 3 romance/contemporaries. Of the books that I finished, I read a total of 4,155 pages, but I also read an additional 589 pages of books that I'm still working on, and that brings my grand total pages at 4,744. As far as star ratings go, I had 0 1 stars, 1 2 star, 4 3 stars, 4 4 stars, and 4 5 stars, which adds up to a total of an average of 3.8 stars. So those are the stats that I track. Now I'm just going to go through the books in the order in which I read them. I'm going to talk briefly about each book if there's a vlog related to them, which for a lot of these there is. I will link it. But the first book that I want to talk about is Pet by Akwaeke Emezi, which was a book that I read for my subscribers picked my TBR. It was my first secret TBR. I'll link that vlog somewhere. This is a young adult / middle grade fantasy about a fictional place where this girl, Jam, lives. And in this place, there used to be monsters, which were basically evil people in charge of things like the prison system and the police. And the monsters have since been eradicated by angels, which are the good people. I gave this book 2 stars. I found the metaphor to be overwritten and overly simple. I think this is very heavy subject matter, and since it's been brought to my attention that it could be considered a middle grade, I do think that younger children could be a good audience for this, or people in junior high, just because the characters read rather young. I believe Jam was supposed to be 15 or 16, and she read like she was about 12 or 13, so I think had she been that age and had that been the age that I thought this book was going towards, I would have understood that better. But in the book, Jam's mother is an artist, and she paints this creature onto canvas, and Jam is in the art studio one day, and the creature comes to life, and his name is Pet, and he says that he is there to hunt a monster. And so Jam and Pet have to go find the monster that's living in their community, and the adults don't want to believe that there's another monster because the monsters have all been eradicated, etc., etc. So it is about trauma and about abuse and about having to come forward and how to deal with that when adults in your life aren't listening to you. So for those reasons, I do think it could be a good book for a kid. I just didn't enjoy it personally, unfortunately, so I did give that one 2 stars. The next book that I read, Song of Solomon by Toni Morrison. I gave this 5 stars. This follows a young man named Milkman throughout his life. It's mostly set, like the current setting is this, I believe the 70s when he is in his 30s. And it's also follows generations back of his past, both on his father's and his mother's side. It talks about how his grandfather on his mom's side was the only Black doctor in their town. And so how that has sort of developed, and his dad is a property developer in this town, and sort of the strife that comes from that, and the tension between social economic class and race, and the class that you're in because of your race. This is a really, really impactful novel. It made me cry. And the more you read it, the more you learn about these different characters and their motivations And I think Toni Morrison is, first of all, an excellent writer. This is the second book I've read by her, and now I want to read everything that she's ever written. So yes, I really loved this book, and I would highly, highly recommend it. And that is also in the reading books that my friends and subscribers recommended to me vlog. So I will link that for you somewhere if you want to hear more detailed thoughts on that book. The next book that I read was Packing for Mars by Mary Roach, which is another book that I gave 5 stars to. It goes this way. Yeah, it's holding upside down. My bad. This is a nonfiction about astronauts and about space, and it covers different topics on how we choose people to be astronauts and how life in space sort of works and how we've been able to adapt certain things to space. This book is really, really funny. If you're interested in that kind of thing and you want more of a comedic view on it, rather than a strictly scientific view. But a lot of the things she talks about, Mary Roach does a really good job of interviewing her subjects and having them explain things to her, and then is able to repackage them to an audience that may not know very much about physics, space, etc. So I did really, really enjoy this one, and this was actually in my reading blog for Reading My Name. So I will link that blog somewhere if you haven't seen that and you would like to. But this and the next 4 books that I'm going to talk about were all a part of that vlog. The second book that I read for that vlog was The Dark Descent of Elizabeth Frankenstein, which is a YA horror. This is a retelling of Frankenstein from the perspective of Elizabeth Frankenstein, who was Victor Frankenstein's adopted sister. Again, I mentioned this in that vlog. I have not read Frankenstein, so I don't know how true of a retelling this is, but the author's purpose was that she wanted to write Mary Shelley's story of Frankenstein, but give the female characters some voice, some character, and some control over their own lives and her own life and destiny. So this is pretty good. I gave it 3 stars. It wasn't my favorite thing. I didn't love the tone of it. I didn't love the writing. I felt like it was a little jumpy from here to there, and the plot points seemed like the author had these things that she needed to get done, and I didn't know how I felt about the journey getting there. But like I said, I do talk more about this in that blog if you're interested. Then I read Lent by Jo Walton. This is, it's technically a fantasy, but I would consider it more of a historical fiction because I feel like it reads more of that. I, again, talk about this more in my vlog, and I don't want to say anything spoilery about this in here, but I feel like I can't really tell you about the plot without spoiling it. So all I will say is that it follows a monk in the Renaissance in Florence, and he has the divine gift of prophecy, as well as he can see actual demons on Earth and banish them back to hell. And so it's sort of about that. It does take place partially in hell. I wish that those parts had been more prolific in this story, because I feel like that was what I was sort of hoping for based on the back cover that says that it's a historical fantasy thriller set in Renaissance Florence and in hell. The hell setting is kind of meh, in my opinion. I gave this 3 stars as well. I just felt like it took a really long time to get into, and it was kind of boring at the start. I think Matt's coming home, so I might have to pause this and start again later. But yes, this was another book that I read for that Reading My Name vlog. So if you are interested in hearing my more in-depth thoughts, check that vlog out. Hello, okay, so I'm back. I don't know if you even noticed a jump, but if there's anything different, I did just go eat lunch because Matt came home from work and I feel awkward filming while he's here. So I will just pick up right where I left off. The 6th book that I read in March was Head Over Heels by Hannah Orenstein, which again I read for my Reading My Name TBR. That book is a contemporary romance about a young girl, Avery, I always say young girl, and it can mean anything from like a 13-year-old to like a 30-year-old, I realize. But Avery is in her early 20s, and she is a former elite gymnast. She did Olympic trials in 2012 and got injured, so she was unable to compete in the Olympics. And at the start of her book, she is moving back to her hometown after a breakup, and she takes a job to train an up-and-coming Olympic gymnast, or a gymnast who is an Olympic hopeful. And it's a romance between her and the head coach at the gym that she used to go to. And the head coach is a new hire. He's her age. I wasn't clear about that when I first read the book, but it was cute. I think I gave it 3 stars. Yeah, I gave it 3 stars. I thought it was fine. There's nothing amazing about it. It does cover some heavier topics than I was really expecting, because I don't read blurbs very closely when I read books. It does hint that there's going to be a bigger topic in it. But if you want to know more about that, again, watch that vlog. I just didn't really buy into the romance as much as I would have liked to. I didn't feel like the chemistry was that great. And also, the way the hero, I guess, is what you say in romance, the way the hero was written, he did something at one point in the book that for me was very much like a deal breaker, and I don't understand how she was able to, or how their relationship was able to come back from it, if that makes sense. Obviously I don't want to spoil it, but like, I don't know. I didn't buy into the relationship for those reasons. Then I read The Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan, which is a reread for me. I mentioned this in my March TBR, which I'll link somewhere if you haven't seen. I am going to try to reread the Percy Jackson and the Olympians series because I never finished it the first time I read it in middle school. So hopefully I will be able to finish it this time around at some point. But this follows Percy Jackson, who is, I think, like 12 at the beginning of this book. And he finds out that he is a demigod, which means his father is one of the gods, one of the Greek gods. And he goes to this place called Camp Half-Blood. And then once there, he gets given this quest to find Zeus's missing lightning bolt. And it just sort of goes from there. It explores friendship and loss. There's one, I gave this book 5 stars because it has that much enjoyment for me. And it was just super fun, super easy to read and listen to. I listened to this as an audiobook. And I really just loved the story of it, and I loved being back in the world. I remember being obsessed with Camp Half-Blood when I was in middle school, but there is a little bit of grief in this book, but I didn't feel, it felt very like glossed over rather than handled, which is interesting, and it makes sense. If you've read the book, you know what I'm talking about probably, but like, I don't know. I felt kind of weird about the handling of grief in this story as a reread, but I still gave the book 5 stars because it still holds a very dear place in my heart. And then I read Days of Blood and Starlight by Laini Taylor. This is the second book in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. I'm buddy reading this trilogy with Kelly at Velvet Library. I'll have her channel linked down below. And this is book 2. These books follow Karou, who is a human girl who was raised by Chimera, and she has always been in this place between the human world, which is Earth, and Eretz, which is the world of Chimera and angels. And Karou is sort of figuring out who she is and what she means to them throughout the first book, and then the second book kind of picks up from there and follows the same characters. We also get the point of view of Akiva, who is an angel in this universe. I really like the world building in here. I think this is a very interesting story, and I enjoy the romance elements that are in it, but it's not the main focus of the story, which I prefer, and so I'm really enjoying reading these, and we will be reading the third book at some point in April. I also was able to, I didn't mention, I was able to finish this book over the weekend that I did Becca's Bookoplathon, so I will link my Bookoplathon vlog. I read 3 books that weekend, and the other 2 books that I read were The Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez and Tender is the Flesh by Agustina Basterica. I will start with this one because I read it first. I did give this 4 stars. I read the first book in this. This is the second book in the Friend Zone series of standalones by Abby Jimenez. The first one follows a couple, and then this one follows one of the women who is friends with the girl in the first book. And it follows her a few years after the events of the first book. Her fiance has died, and now she is sort of picking up the pieces of her life and grieving from that. But she finds this man's dog at the beginning of the book, and it's the love story between her and the dog's owner. I thought this was really cute. I really enjoyed the little like meet cute of her finding his dog. And he's a musician who is on tour when she finds his dog, so she has to watch the dog for a while. And then it's just about them sort of developing a relationship. I mentioned this in my Bookoplathon vlog. The weirdest thing about these books to me is that the characters are similar in age to me. So in the first book, they're 24, and in the second book, this one, they're 26. I'm 25, so right in the middle. But all of the women are obsessed with getting married right now, having babies right now, starting their lives right now, and that's just not something that I really relate to a whole lot. So for me, that motivation is kind of a miss, but I did think that the love story was really cute, and obviously there's a lot of things that happen in this book that are like coincidental or whatever, but I did enjoy this one a lot, and I think it's definitely worth the read. But I do think the first book is skippable because I did not like the characters in that one at all. But the side character in this, Sloane, is one of my favorite characters from the first book as well. So very happy to have followed her in this one. And then I read Tender is the Flesh, which is an Argentine horror novel about a dystopian future where people are no longer able to farm and consume animals, so they start farming and consuming other humans. So this book is about cannibalism. It's very dark, very bleak, very graphic in its descriptions of things. But it's also just about the main character's life and sort of what is happening to him in his life, and how he is handling that. And I thought this book was so well written. I ended up giving it 4 stars, but it was really close to a 5-star for me. But I don't think this book is for everyone, so definitely check out trigger warnings. But if this sounds like something that's interesting to you, I really think it's worth the read if it's something that's not going to trigger you. Then I read Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. This is Sally Rooney's debut novel, and I gave this 5 stars. I could not believe how much I really related to these characters and felt like I knew them. It really did feel like you were getting told a story by a friend, having a conversation with a friend while reading this book, which I really appreciated. But this follows, gosh, I can't remember her name now. Frances. This follows Frances, who is best friends with her ex-girlfriend Bobby, and that's the only real romantic relationship she's had in her life. But the story follows Frances and Bobby as they meet this older couple, Melissa, who is a photographer who's doing a piece on them because they are slam poets, and Melissa's husband, who is an actor in Ireland at this time. I think he mostly does stage, but he does a few like television things as well. And Frances begins this sort of affair with Nick, and it's kind of about that, but also about her friendship with Bobby and just about her figuring out who she is as a person over the span of several months. I love this book, like I mentioned. It doesn't sound like the kind of thing that I would be interested in, because usually I hate like affairs and cheating in books. It's something that I can't stand. But for some reason, the way that it was handled in this, where it wasn't like this big moral dilemma, it was just, this is simply what has happened, and it's neither good or bad. It just is what it is. And that, for whatever reason, made it work better for me. I don't know what that says about me as a person, but I did really enjoy the way that Sally Rooney was able to just present us with these characters, with their flaws and what they did, and she didn't really pass any moral judgments on any of them, which I thought was really impactful, and it made this feel like a real story. Like, I truly feel like I could call Frances on the phone and talk to her if I wanted to, which is not something that I feel after every book that I've read. So yes, I'm very glad that I read this. Then I read The Guest List by Lucy Foley, which is a mystery thriller that came out last year, and I believe it won the Goodreads Choice Award for Best Mystery Thriller of 2020. And it is a closed circle mystery where a murder takes place on this island off the coast of Ireland, which is the setting of the wedding of this wedding. So you're following different perspectives from people in the wedding party. And you don't know at the beginning of the book who has died or who has killed them, but you get to follow all these different perspectives and find out how all of these people sort of intertwine and all of their like dirty baggage. I thought this was a really interesting read. I didn't really get the 5-star feeling from it, so I gave it 4 stars, but I do think it's a really, really good mystery thriller, and I think it's paced very well and all of the plots tie together really well. But yes, I really did like this book, and I would highly recommend it if it sounds interesting to you. And I do think that it had a very satisfying ending, which I think is hard to come by in mystery thrillers especially. And then the last thing that I read in the month of March was The Night of Cake and Puppets, which is a novella for the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. On Goodreads, this is listed as book 2.5. And in publication date order, that's true, but the events of this book occurred during the first book, and it is how Susanna, who is Carue's friend, sort of woos her boyfriend in the book. Mick? It's M-I-K, I don't know how it's pronounced, I'm not Czech. But this book is cute. It's got lots of really fun drawings and illustrations throughout it, which I thought was really nice. And it is a short read. I read this probably in an hour. It's 190 pages, but there are like full page illustrations throughout it, as well as multiple illustrations on each page. And I just thought it was really cute. It was really sweet. I think in the end, she says this book is dedicated to kissing, which I think is really nice. And it's just like, I don't know. If you love these side characters, I think you would really enjoy this. It doesn't add anything to the plot because everything that happens in the book you hear about in the actual book. But, you know, it was a cute read. It was fun. I saw it at my library and picked it up, so I'm glad that I read this. And I did give this 3 stars just because I don't think it's, like, necessary to read, and I don't think it even added anything, but I just did have a good time reading it. But that's it. Those are the 13 books that I read in March. Let me know in the comments down below if you've read any of these books and how you felt about them. Also, feel free to let me know what you read in March and what your favorite read was for the month. And for now, that's going to be it. So I will see you in my next video. Bye!
I should've told you that I loved you.